All right, we'd like to call this meeting of the West Dallas West Milwaukee School District to order, please. If we can please rise for the pledge. Ms. Justin, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Suzette, we do the roll, please. Yes. Ms. Klug? Here. Mr. Sikich?
Present.
Mr. Keller?
Yep.
Mrs. Justum? Here. Mr. Ustruck?
Here.
Mr. Schultz?
Present.
Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mr. Bailey is excused, and President Emmons.
Good. All right, I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Luxman.
Thank you. The board has its first actions to consider election of board officers, so I facilitate the selection of the president, and then whoever is selected as president takes over and does the rest. But they're all kind of in the same procedure. So I'll open nominations for president of the school board. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Stephanie Emons.
I would second.
Okay. Any other nominations for president? Third time, nominations for president. Okay, and then we'll close the nominations. We had a first and a second. We can do this by unanimous, or do you want to do the paper?
There's no options.
Right. So, do a voice vote?
I
Okay.
mean, just,
Oh, because, it's going to be by unanimous vote, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's all yours.
All right, we will then move on to, thank you, first of all, thank you all very much. It's been an interesting experience being president this last year, but so we'll do our best to do another year for all of you. So I appreciate your feedback and your confidence. Let's move on to nominations for vice president. We will accept nominations for vice president. Noah?
I would like to nominate Heather.
Okay, we've got a nomination for Heather.
I'll second.
Second, we've got a nomination and a second. Do we have any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right, we had a motion and a second for Heather for vice president. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And we'll move on to treasurer. We would look for a nomination for treasurer.
I nominate Noah.
Okay.
I'll second.
We had a nomination and a second of Noah for treasurer. Do we have any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right. We have a motion and a second for Noah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll then move on to clerk. We're looking for a nomination for clerk.
I would like to nominate Gary.
A nomination
I'll second.
and second. Got a nomination and a second for Gary for clerk. Do we have any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right, we've got a motion and a second for Gary as clerk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Move on to secretary. Look for a nomination for secretary.
I would nominate Brian.
I'll second.
Got a nomination and a second for Brian as secretary. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right, we've had a motion and a second for Brian as secretary. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. All right, congratulations, everybody. On to the next. Okay. Public notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Do we have any additions or modifications to tonight's agenda?
I have none.
Any board members? Okay. We will then move on to public comments. And when we call your name for public comments, please, when you come to the podium, please provide your name and address for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And a reminder that the board will not engage, debate, or respond directly to public comments here tonight, but rather a response will be provided by the superintendent's office before the next regularly scheduled board meeting, which is on May 20th. So I have a list here from up front, and if there's any others, then Brandon will bring those up. Rafael Gondre.
Hi, my name is Rafael Gondre. I live on 2233 South 81st Street, and I'm here to talk about music theory. Now, taking music theory for the past 2 years has really helped me improve myself a lot, especially for my future in music performance. And it has done so to where instead of graduating high school with only experience in 2 instruments and being able to kind of read sheet music, now I can read any piece of sheet music you put in front of me. I have experience on 4 instruments, an album out with my band Fightin' Bob, and an EP in the works with another group I'm part of called RNG. and more experience in live shows in many different settings, ranging from a symphonic orchestra in Carnegie Hall to a rock band on Johnson Control stage at the State Fair, or Summerfest, excuse me, and also performances at the State Fair, to a guitar and cello duo playing a dinner party for family and friends. So it's really helped me grow and improve myself as a musician, and makes me feel very, very confident for my future. So I'd say it's helped me a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kiara Menzia?
I'm Kiara Menzia. I live on 2021 South 81st Street, and I'm here to talk about music theory. On being my first year in music theory, it's helped me so much. I can take that knowledge and apply it to my normal music classes, and being a music major next year, I'm going to be going into college with knowledge that I wouldn't have known otherwise. I can figure out chords, and I can read another clef now that I couldn't read a year ago. And without it, I would be lost next year. So I think having music theory is a very important class in high school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Zachary Bieksma?
Hi, my name is Zachary Bieksma. Teach at Nathan Hale in Lane and live at 7801 West Center. I know most of you. And I know that preliminary staffing and budget is coming out, and I just ask that you look very carefully at staffing decisions that are being made for next year, particularly in regards to which classes are running and class sizes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were there any other public comments in the back? Nope. Okay. All right, thank you all. All right, then we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Great. Thank you. We will start this evening with 8.1, a report from West Allis Central High School student representatives. So please introduce yourselves and share your information.
Good evening, I'm Holmes Keels.
And I'm Nora Gossetti, and we have your Central High School update.
Athletic update. Our spring sports are fighting the spring weather challenges and working to get as many games in as possible, with many creative solutions being sought. Thanks to all of our coaches, student athletes, and the families for being flexible and understanding with all the shuffling that's been occurred in the last-minute situations. Our track and field team is approaching the end of our regular season with conference meets ongoing. They will participate in the postseason meeting on May 20th at Kettle Moraine High School, with hopes of advancing to sectionals at the West Allis Athletic Complex on Thursday, May 23rd. Our golfers have limited action, but they are also approaching the postseason playoffs beginning on May 21st at Wanaki Golf Course. Also May 21st, our softball team will begin their playoff season. Our baseball and soccer teams will close out the regular seasons a little later in May, with their playoff season beginning both on May 28th. We look forward to seeing you at one of our final regular season games or during a postseason play. In the meantime, we thank you for continuing to wish our favorable spring weather.
March Madness. Central's annual March Madness event took place on March 29th, with events throughout the week leading up to the big tournament on Friday. Students and staff competed in a Pop-A-Shot competition throughout the week, which also included a Dress-Up Spirit Week. The week culminated in a huge basketball tournament on Friday, with dozens of teams and hundreds of students participating. The winning boys and girls teams took on the staff members in the championship for each sex. For the first time in quite some time, the male staff team lost, but our female staff team was successful against the student girls team. All in all, it was a really fun event that brings together the Central community. UWM field trip. On Wednesday, March 27th, 40 of Central's Avid 9 and 10 students went to UWM to tour the campus and learn about what UWM has to offer. Students even got some cool UWM merch. The tour concluded at the Roberto Hernandez Center, which serves Latino and Latina students, as well as others. Finally, students were able to eat lunch at the Union and truly get the college experience.
WAC Kindness Week. The week of April 8th was Central's annual Kindness Week, facilitated by the Gay Straight Alliance. Students were encouraged to engage in acts of kindness, not only this week, but every week of the year. Kindness grams were also sold in the cafeteria on Monday and Tuesday. Students were able to write an anonymous kind message to appear and send a treat. All proceeds from the sale of the Kindness Grams went to Project Q, a community center and homeless shelter that focuses on LGBTQ youth here in Milwaukee. April 12th was also the National Day of Silence, in which students and staff take a vow of silence to symbolize the silencing effect of bullying LGBTQ youth in schools. Over 300 students and staff participated by either wearing a rainbow ribbon to represent their silence or a purple ribbon to indicate their support. ACT Aspire testing. On April 10th and 11th, all of our freshman and sophomore students completed the ACT Aspire testing. Though it was a long day for testing, both freshman and sophomore classes worked diligently on standardized tests. Parent-teacher conferences. On Thursday, April 11th, Central held its spring parent-teacher conferences. All of Central's teachers gathered in the field house and met with parents of students of all grade levels. Both parents and teachers appreciate the opportunity to discuss their students' progresses and goals throughout the second semester.
2 weeks ago, Central hosted the spring play, The Diary of Anne Frank. The cast and crew included students from both high schools and reflected a strong West Allis community. Congratulations to the staff and students who made it such a great success. We hope you were able to see at least one of the 4 shows that weekend. April was Autism Awareness Month. Central's support of students with autism and disabilities is unrivaled. Students were informed about autism with the interactive display case near the entrance of the building. In addition, Mrs. McCann and the Central Perk threw an amazing celebration Wednesday morning, serving up blue juice and cotton candy before school. Students and teachers wore blue on Wednesday, April 24th, to help bring awareness to autism. Students in Mrs. Rucka's social inquiry class also created blue puzzle piece pins and magnets for staff and students to display their support. On Thursday, April 25th, current and former Shared Journey students presented to Central's freshman class about the hard realities of being a teenage parent. Each student talked about the tough challenges they have faced and the new responsibilities that come with becoming a teenage parent. Both students and teachers found the event to be very informative and eye-opening.
Christina Sanfilippo and Ella Gassetti attended the Wisconsin State Family Career and Community Leaders of America State Leadership Conference and STAR, Students Taking Action with Recognition events. Both Christina and Ella are Region 7 representatives and were recognized at the conference. In addition, both girls competed in children's literature and received gold ratings. On April 24th, Central students were invited to attend a lecture and a community discussion at Marquette University. Dr. Vesla Weaver spoke to students about the importance of creating spaces and communities for open dialogue and interaction with people in their own networks and around the world. She also shared her research on criminal justice in Milwaukee. Thanks to Dr. Robert Smith of Marquette University for reaching out to West Allis Central and bringing us to the event. Final thanks to Ms. Boyd and Ms. Hanson for organizing.
May 1st was College Signing Day. Mrs. Wright organized Central's first ever signing event for our seniors who will have committed to college, the military, or the trades. More than 100 students were recognized at this event, and their signed posters will be displayed at Central. In addition, one of our student photographers was able to take photos of each senior who will receive a framed copy of it. It was an inspiring way to begin our seniors last month at Central. Last week, 15 Central students went to Madison to compete in the Skills USA State Leadership and Skills Conference. Events included architectural drafting, robotics and automotion, welding, woodworking, automotive service technology, and more.
AP testing. Now on to what is coming up at Central. AP testing started today. Students in all grade levels will take the national exams daily throughout next week, Friday. These tests determine whether a student will earn college credit for their hard work in college-level advanced placement courses throughout the year.
May 9th is our annual Senior Honors and Awards Night. At this event, the seniors who are receiving any honors and awards, including scholarships, will be recognized. Dozens of seniors and their families attend, and the night is capped off with the announcement of the winner of the Honor Cup. The Honor Cup is awarded to the most outstanding senior student as voted on by the teachers. The night is a great way to begin the last month of our seniors' time at Central.
On Thursday, May 16th, 29 new members will be inducted into Central's chapter of National Honor Society. NHS is a national service organization that is founded on the pillars of scholarship, service, leadership, and character. These students are some of the most involved at Central while maintaining extremely high GPAs. I believe that concludes it.
Wonderful. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Heather.
First, congratulations on UWM and Eau Claire, right? Yes, very cool. I read that newsletter. That was very cool, all the photos of each student. But also, tell those students who did Anne Frank that not only was it a great message, but the lines that they memorized was phenomenal, because I was blown away by the amount of speaking that those children did. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Is this the last time you guys will be here for the school year?
That very well could be, yes. Very
All
well could be.
right. Well, if that is the case, then have a wonderful last month of the year. Good luck in finals and have a wonderful summer. So
Thank you.
enjoy.
You as well.
Thank you very much for all your time and all the messages that you've relayed to all of us.
Great, and we'll go on to 8.2, the school showcase. At this meeting is Madison Elementary School. And Brianne, the principal, is here.
That's your title. Brianne Principal.
Principal.
Hey, it worked right away.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here today to talk about Madison. This is my second year as a principal at Madison School. This is my first opportunity to get to showcase to kind of tell you what we have going on at Madison, though. So thank you very much. I'll kind of walk through those bright spots, talk about some challenges, and then what makes a future that's unique to here at Madison. But I'm going to go in reverse order so we end on the positive note. So hopefully these arrows work. So the first thing I want to talk about was highlighting one feature that is unique to us at Madison, and that's our journey we're taking through the deeper learning design process. Now, it's my understanding that each of our buildings eventually within our district are going to go through this process, but I think what's unique about Madison is our deeper learning team is really the first team that's taken it through the process from scratch. We went in with a blank slate, no preconceived notions of what Madison could be, and I think that's given us purpose. Right, we're going through this process to better determine and define who we are as a Madison community. So I'll kind of walk through what we've done so far with that. The first thing is trying to gather information from all of our stakeholders. So first of all, we, as a deeper learning team, developed a survey, and we gave the survey to all the parents that we possibly could. So whether it was a PTA meeting or a family movie night, student conferences, you name it, we were trying to get this survey out because we really did want as much information from our parents as possible. We then developed a interview, and we interviewed our students, our parents, and then also some local businesses within our area. And lastly, we did a camera study. So we ventured out and gave our students Polaroid cameras to take home. It's kind of dangerous, but it was all right. They went home, took some pictures about what was important to their family and their household. We then gathered all that information, and it was a lot of information. And we started talking about, what patterns do we see? What keeps popping up with our population of people? And we asked some key questions to help develop who we are as a Madison community. And what we came to our conclusion is that when you think of Madison, when our stakeholders really think of Madison, they see it as a small, family-oriented, community-based school. And that truly is who we are. And now what we're doing is, the fun part of that is, what does that mean for us? Because you can say that you're family-oriented, you can say you're a community-driven school, but what does that really look like? And that's where we are right now in the process. And we're walking through some of these questions as a deeper learning team to help determine what that does look like when you walk in Madison. And it's really, that is our unique feature, and it's really exciting work. We began it this school year, and then it'll carry into next school year as we prototype really what does that mean for us. And I think it's important to note that this is from our community. This wasn't me. This wasn't really even our deeper learning team. This is what our stakeholders believe Madison to be. And I think we're going to get more buy-in, more engagement from our family and our community because of that. So that's our unique feature. Some of our challenges. One of our challenges, let me be very clear, we are continuing to grow. However, our expectations at Madison are not just to grow, it's to have significant gains. So that's one of our challenges that we keep seeing. We're seeing the student learning within our classrooms each and every day, but we need to see that carry over to our district and our school report cards. And one way that we want to see that continue is through closing our gap. And we have seen that happen, but specifically now we want to focus in on how do we do that for our students with special needs? So that's the challenge that we're taking on, is closing that gap. And how we're doing that is by really focusing in on ensuring that all of our students have an opportunity to learn, to make sure that we have equitable practices happening at Madison. And when I say equitable practices, that really starts with three things. Number one, looking at our mindset, looking at our classroom lists, and then using our push-in models. So the first thing is making sure our mindset for all of our staff is that students, all students, can learn. And making sure that we're looking at our students' assets and looking at our students' strengths within that classroom and bringing those out within our classroom. So that's the first thing, our mindset, because we can't do anything if we don't have that mentality at Madison. The second thing is our district provided us with this book, Building Equity, last year, and to all of our principals, and I really took it to heart because within that, it's like a manual of how you can bring more equity to your school building. And one thing that was talked about here is a model that you can use to help design your classroom lists. So we as a team, all the classroom teachers help develop the class lists now to make sure that we're not tracking students at all, and also to make sure that our students have that opportunity to learn. Each student has access to that grade level content because we know that's what's going to help close that gap. So that's the second thing. And the last thing is really using a push-in model for everything, whether it's ELL, our ELL teacher, whether it's our math and reading interventionist, even our students with special needs, as long as our IEP, their individual goals allow for it, we're trying to push into that classroom, because again, that's where we know the great instruction's happening, and that's where they're gonna have access to that grade level content. So all through those different facets, that's really how we're looking to close that gap. Again, we're seeing growth, we're seeing our numbers moving, now we're trying to focus in on those smaller groups, of those smaller populations of students at our school, those students with special needs. And then on to our bright spots. So this was the hardest part of the presentation because we have a ton of bright spots that are happening at Madison. So I tried to focus it in on three main ones. So that's the school culture, how we're incorporating the deeper learning competencies, and then our staff. So first of all is our school culture. You can see pictures where we have cadets, we have staff members and families outside of the school hours. There's a staff picture there of the Biggest Loser, which I will go on record, I did win the Biggest Loser. So. But our students, our staff, and our parents would agree, Madison is a place that you do want to be. And I think oftentimes school culture is overlooked, but to me it's quite simple. If you are happy where you work, you're gonna do better work. And teaching is one of the most important jobs, so I make it my mission personally to ensure that we have a strong and a very positive school culture. And since joining Madison, I know it was just last year, but we haven't had any classroom teachers leave us. And in fact, due to our enrollment, we're gonna be gaining a teacher next year. And just based on the applications that have come in, Madison looks to be a place that people want to work. And I think that's the school culture that's creating that. And we're getting highly qualified teachers that do want to come to Madison because they want to join in on the great things that we're doing there. And again, the staff, the teachers, that's what's going to make the biggest impact on our students' learning. Which brings me to our next our next one is the deeper learning competencies. So we're using the deeper learning competencies on a daily basis. I think our district has done a really great job of providing professional development to our staff members. So not only do they have a really solid understanding of what they are, but now they're successful in incorporating them within the classroom. So at Madison, we had our teachers were able to choose what deeper learning competency do you really want to focus in on this year. They then gave us what supports they needed. We have our deeper learning coach, Becky Grease, that is doing, with every single teacher, has done a student-centered coaching cycle. And within that cycle, we're using our student data as it relates to the focus, the deeper learning focus that the teacher has chosen. I then go in on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to do my 10-minute walkthroughs, which are different than the evaluation. It's just going in and seeing what's happening in the classroom. But my focus then is looking for the look-fors for those deeper learning competencies. So not only do we have teachers goal setting around them, I also am having some accountability to that piece of, is it really happening within the classroom? And it has been, and it's been very successful. And we're seeing that success within our student learning. So this is some pictures of some of our students doing some deeper learning activities. A lot of them come from our inquiry night that we recently had, which always has the most families that come out because of course they want to see what are their kids doing within the classroom. So this is a lot of the projects that they've been working on. And just some of the deeper learning activities that have been taking place. And in fact, I was asked to put in a plug for you guys. If you haven't gotten an invite already, you will be getting an invite. Our 3rd and 4th graders are having a wax museum at the library on May 17th at 1 p.m., where they will be becoming characters or presenting as influential people. So there's the plug for our next deeper learning activity that's happening. But truly, we're trying to make it more authentic and give a broader audience for our students, because that's engaging them and giving them purpose to their learning. So. And then finally, our last bright spot, but a big bright spot, is our overall staff at Madison. And I'm sure every principal comes in here and talks up their staff and says we have the best staff, so I guess you can add me to that list. But at Madison, I am surrounded by a staff that first and foremost builds relationships with kids, because we know if you don't have those relationships, they're not going to want to learn from you in the first place. Secondly, the staff is trying to incorporate more of that project-based learning, because we know that's what engages kids, and they're incorporating the students' interests into their learning. And lastly, embracing that mentality that 100% of the people in our building truly are there for 100% of our students. So I thought it was timely to recognize our bright spots at Madison, which is our staff, with it being Teacher Appreciation Week. So that is our last bright spot at Madison. I know I'm a fast talker,
Nice.
but.
Got it.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
Hi.
Hi.
For the survey that you administered to the parents, first of all, do you know what your response rate was for the number of parents that you had? What percentage did you get back for surveys?
I want to say it was probably about a quarter, 25%, something like that.
And were they administered in person, or did you just hand them a piece of paper and then they returned it?
Both. So we did it in person. So at those events, I was literally there at the table. Like at movie night, I was like trying to get the movie going. And here's a survey you could take while I'm setting this up. And the movie didn't work. It just happened to not work that night. So they got an extra 15 minutes, of course, as they're watching you. But and then we did send it with like in our Wednesday folders as well. But we felt like we got more back when it was the in-person here, fill it
Sure.
out right now.
Right.
So,
Great, thank you.
yeah.
I just want to say, I don't know Madison, or the last time Madison presented to us, but this is a much better presentation, and, you know, it starts at the top, and thank you for what you're doing, and Madison's vibe has really changed, and I know some staff there, and, you know, they're pumped, so
Great.
thank you. And
Because I
it
gotta be
starts
honest, a
at the
school
top.
full of kids, I can, no problem, but you guys, you scare me, so.
No,
We're real
awesome.
mean for you.
Keep it going,
We're super mean.
keep it going.
Thank you very much, that means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, just echo the same thing. So I know when I've been there, the vibe is fantastic, and obviously I hear from the staff, and they're very enthusiastic and excited to be at work every day, so.
Well,
a
it's not, it's
testament-
on them.
But it's a
right, so-
testament to what's going on in the building as a whole,
Yeah.
so,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Yep, thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks, Brianne. All right, I will go on to 8.3, the legislative update, which is not actually an update at all. We're just kind of waiting for things to start to move now with the state budget. In terms of district recognitions, there's a whole lot of them. I'm not going to read all of this. But given that it's Teacher Appreciation Week, one of the things that we did on Fridays, we took recognized a teacher from each of our schools. Principal or another leader came. Often they bring a spouse or a partner. And we're part of a great big celebration downtown that gets thrown by the Metropolitan Milwaukee Alliance of Black School Educators, MAPSE, and this was their 50th year. And it's a big, fancy event. One of the teachers was right there sitting in front. I was going to put her on the spot and say, what was it like? And it's powerful in two ways, and I forget this because I've been there year after year, but it's powerful that it's just our whole team is somewhere celebrating teachers, so all the principals are in the room together. But for the individual teachers that are recognized each year, it's can be mind-changing. I mean, one of our teachers came up to me and she had tears in her eyes and she said, "This was the best day of my life." It's like, you know, everybody clapped for you and you got a plaque and your face was on the big screen for, 20 seconds, but it was the best day of her life. But it is a cool thing to recognize the teachers. And what we wanted to share publicly is the school, the teacher, and then what their principal said about the teacher, right? So that, we thought that was really kind of nice to share. And then I'm going to jump to the bottom of the second page, so I'll hit a little bit of these things. So at James Dotke High School, senior Jasmine Gully was awarded a $10,000 Herb Cole Education Foundation 2000 Initiative Scholarship for her high level of motivation and commitment to education. Jasmine, along with teachers, Ms. Doherty and Ms. Murphy, attended the scholarship luncheon on April 13th, where Jasmine accepted the award from Mr. Herb Cole. At Frank Lloyd Wright, 5 eighth-grade students were selected out of 273 students and 13 schools to compete in the regional National History Day event in Madison. These outstanding students are Valentine Chavez, David Cervantes, Eddie Martinez Guzman, Alvis Esperanza, and Riley Emmons. And Hoover, at Hoover Elementary School, K-5 reading specialist Holly Ford was named April's Teacher of the Month on Channel 12. And then at Pershing Elementary School, Panorama, so that's the software platform we use for social emotional learning, reached out to Deidre and Steve Harris to commend Pershing for their work around Panorama and their SEL work. Principal Steve Harris from Brooke Smith recently participated in a teleconference with the Panorama team to discuss all of the work that Pershing is doing in regards to SEL and our post-assessment scores. After the teleconference, Panorama has invited Mr. Harris and Mrs. Smith to participate in a webinar in May with Education Week. According to Panorama, across our work with dozens of districts, some schools we work with show a particularly positive association between SEL and post-assessment scores and growth in assessment scores. And it turns out that Pershing Elementary is now one of those. From Leadership and Learning, Nathan Hill, high school teachers Nick Brem and Ryan Lindberg presented their experience around co-teaching to a class at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. They did an amazing job representing our district and sharing their experience. In Recreation and Community Services, facility scheduling specialist Jill Ponzi led a meeting with representatives from the Wauwatosa School District designed to help them understand how school duties facilitating scheduling direct makes processes far more efficient and effective in our district. And the office operations manager, Casey Stanton, worked with community business partners so that December 2019 activity guide was for the first time also published in Spanish. Her initiative and collaboration has helped us to better serve our community. And from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, May 3rd, 2019, was proclaimed as School Lunch Hero Day. The proclamation recognizes those that provide a caring, respectful food service environment. Special thanks to our food service provider, Sodexo, and each of their employees. Their work supports the health and well-being of our children and significantly enhances the learning environment in our schools. And then last, from the superintendent's office, Scott Yauk, the president and CEO of Cobalt Partners, recently offered his sincere thanks and recognition to the West Allis West Milwaukee District Board of Education. He stated, and this is a quote from his presentation, "We are grateful to Dan Bailey, Stephanie Emmons, Heather Justin, Brian Keller, Christine Klude, Noah Lee, Jeff Sickich, and Gary Schultz, and Bill Ustruck for their vision and patience during the building sale process. Because of our initial work together, the overall project is now going to be transformational for the city of West Allis." And he made those comments, he hosted Beth and I laughed, he hosted a $6.5 million dinner, sort of. But he hosted a very fancy dinner, and representatives from the city were there. I couldn't make it, so Beth went, and I think it's evidence that we're kind of all back in the same, working together again, and want to see this thing move forward. And it's moving. So then, last thing, on the superintendent's report, real quick, just a couple updates. There were no public comments from our meeting on April 22nd. The rec center groundbreaking will be set mid-June. I haven't finalized the date yet, but watch for that. So we'll get I'd like to have some board members there. That'd be great. And then, again, it's Teacher Appreciation Week, and it's almost impossible for us to say thank you enough for what really good teachers do. But at the same time, I want to be grateful and show some appreciation for our parent-teacher associations, the PTAs that, are making lunches and doing all kinds of odd things to help us help our teachers know they're valued. And we worked with the rec center, and we sent out baskets of treats to every school. And the guy who got to deliver them for rec today sent a very nice email about just how great he felt just being able to bring all this joy into teachers' lounges and make people happy. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. All right, we will move on to item 9, the board president's report. We'll first take a look at the review of the board calendar. Tonight, Monday, May 6th, we have a regular Board of Education meeting, and immediately following, we have a financial stability and efficiency workshop on the proposed 1920 budget and preliminary tax levy number 1. On Monday, May 20th at 6 o'clock, we have a regular Board of Education meeting, and following that, we have our board development workshop with Drew Howick. On Tuesday, May 28th, from 4 to 7 p.m., with the awards beginning at 5:30, we have our employee recognition reception at the Banquet Hall at New Berlin Hills Golf Course. On Monday, June 10th, we have a regular Board of Education meeting, and then following that, we have 2 workshops, elementary report cards and grading practices, and proposed 2019-2020 budget and preliminary tax levy number 2. Do any board members have any community updates or anything? Heather?
I just wanted to say, I went and saw Franklin Wright's yearbook play, which was so cute. And those kids, you could see how nervous some of them are at first time on stage, but it was absolutely adorable. And it brought back some of those high school memories you forget about. And also, West Milwaukee is Once Upon a Mattress. And my husband said to me, I kept having to remind myself, these are middle school kids. It was so phenomenal. And I see Jordan out there, fantastic job. Oh, I'm sorry. And the music director, sorry. Not forgetting anybody. Sorry. But a fantastic show. If you didn't get to see it, you really missed out.
We went as well, and I was able to bring one of the students that we're hosting. He's from
Yeah.
Japan, and in the intermission, I said, so what do you think? He goes, I think they're professionals.
No.
Yeah. When I didn't bring my reading glasses, I had changed my prescription, I was wearing a different contact, and so I didn't get to read the program until I got home. And when I read that second paragraph, that they're in this rebuilding, what they feel is like a rebuilding, because they had so many 8th graders, go on to, leave and go on to be freshmen now. It was I was blown away, just blown away. I was recommending to everybody that I ran into, like on Saturday, go see it tonight, because it was definitely worth, the $5, 10 times, 100 times over. It was an amazing performance.
It was,
really
it was.
great.
I went Thursday.
Yeah.
It's good.
Thank you all. All right, item 9.2, every year we go through the appointments of different volunteer positions for the school board. So tonight we have 4 that we will need to take volunteers for. One will be our district parliamentarian, and then our CISA delegate, our WASB delegate, and a WASB alternate. So first, we would be looking for volunteers and a possible second volunteer or alternate volunteer for our district parliamentarian. Jeff, are you interested again?
I'll continue that.
Thank you very much. We would appreciate that. The CISA delegate, so this would be our representative who attend the CISA meetings. I think they're monthly, and be our board's representative at those CISA meetings. Is there I know that Dan had expressed interest. Is there anybody else who's interested in that role? If not, then we'll ask Dan offline if he'd like to continue that. And then we would also be looking for our WASB delegate, and this is someone who would go to.
I'll do the WASB one.
Okay, and then we would also need an alternate in case Jeff isn't available or in case we need to have a second. Is anybody interested in being the WASB delegate to attend the state conference and the, Heather, you would like to do that?
I'm there most of
Okay.
it anyway, so yeah.
If you'd like to be the alternate, that would be wonderful.
Sure.
Okay, great, so we've got all of those. And then item 9.3 is sort of an informational kind of thumbs up, thumbs down kind of item. So CISA has asked us whether we would like to seek a position on their Board of Control. So we'd basically be throwing our hat in the ring to run for a position on the Board of Control for CISA. There's no guarantee we would get it or be elected. But if we would want to pursue a position, we would need to let them know right away so that they could send us a nomination packet, and then that would be taken with our CISA delegate to the next CISA meeting on May 21st. Does anyone have any feelings or comments or suggestions on
A
that?
question.
Yeah.
So Dan's our rep, would this mean that we have a second person from our board?
Yes.
Yes.
Technically, yes. I mean, the person could wind up being Dan,
Yeah.
but it could be, somebody else but we would have to be authorized to win the seat first.
Sure.
Noah?
Can you just describe a little bit what the point of being on the Board of Control would do?
Yeah, I don't have much information on that, other than what was in the letter.
Yeah, just.
I read that, but I was like, does it
Yeah.
involve decision-making or direction for the CISA, or is that basically it? I mean, that's an
Thoughts on that,
assumption.
Mike?
I don't know
Dan,
the composition of the board of
Yeah,
directors.
and I
for
wonder
CISA.
if Dan would have any additional information or not.
I think he would,
Yeah.
because when Pat was on, Pat always had all answers to CISA issues.
Yeah.
Right.
I would assume so. I mean, with the different regional meetings and have, probably some feedback into WASB with regards to, the policies every year, the resolutions and things like that, so.
And we're competing within our group, right?
Correct.
We're in Group B.
Correct.
So it's those other
Mhm.
schools that basically one of those would be on the Board.
Yes.
I mean, I'm all for, I'm all for having some say, basically. So if the rest of the board was supportive of it, I would definitely be
I am too. I'm supportive of seeing if a seat would be granted, or
Yeah.
a one, I guess.
Yeah.
The challenging part then becomes who winds up filling it, because based on how this reads, it's unclear whether, because it's a 3-year term, whether it's a rotating 3-year term, or whether it's an ongoing 3-year term.
Right.
So there is some clarification that we would need from CISA. But I too, I think that, as our district gets stronger too, that it's good for us to have some additional participation and exposure to what's going on in our CISA.
Certainly.
So if
Do we
everyone's.
need to take action on that and move that we do it, or?
Yeah, we would look for a motion to seek the paperwork to pursue the nomination.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? All right, we'll request the information, and then we'll provide an update as soon as we have it.
Good.
Great. Okay, we will move on to the consent agenda. Tonight we have 4 items. Item 10.1, the approval of minutes from the April 22nd, 2019 regular Board of Education meeting. Item 10.2, the employment summary. Item 10.3, the supplementary contracts. And item 10.4, the adoption of resolution for continued use of facsimile signatures of the president, treasurer, and clerk as adopted on May 7th, 2018 for the period from May 6th, 2019 through June 30th, 2019. Does anyone need anything separated? If not, we would look for a motion.
So move.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? If not, sorry.
One quick question. Is that correct, that it's just gonna be for a month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought maybe it was a typo. That's
I asked the same thing last year. Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, 'cause it's through the end of the
Fiscal year.
fiscal year, and then it starts
Okay.
again.
And then we get new ones.
And we won't need it.
Right.
The officers.
Right, so we can actually stay the same.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I think we have a motion and second already,
Yeah, we
right?
do.
Yeah,
Yep,
we
Oh, we
okay.
do?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? What do you want?
Yep, if I could ask for a little pause here. The board just approved the hiring of 2 new principals, and it's an opportunity for us to introduce them. So we'll start with Kiana Polk. So Kiana, if you want to come on up and join us. Kiana's going to be the new principal at Jefferson Elementary.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Wearing red. I go for the Bears, Jefferson Bears.
Already? Awesome.
All right, so, good evening to you all. Again, I'm Quiana Pope. Very excited to be here. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. As a product of 53206, known as the worst zip code in America due to high crime, drugs, and poverty, I know firsthand what it's like to come from meager beginnings. My household consisted of my grandparents, uncles, and aunt, as well as my 2 younger siblings. Hard work, perseverance, giving to those less fortunate, and most importantly, love, were core beliefs in our home. As a high school student, I began working at my neighborhood school known as Parkman or Andrew Douglas Middle School as an after-school tutor in the CLC program. During this time, I also worked at Second Harvest Food Bank, now known as America's Second Harvest, a leading hunger relief organization in Milwaukee. Upon entering college at Alverno, I began working at Frederick Hospital in the ER as a radiology assistant. I knew that I always wanted to help others and become a doctor in some capacity, so this provided me the opportunity to work with various people and patients. While at Frederick, I continued my work in education at Keefe Avenue School as a curriculum aide, as well as at Fritchie and Kosciuszko Middle Schools. After earning my bachelor's degree in science with secondary education, I worked as a teacher at Young Leaders Academy, a K-8 school. This experience presented me an opportunity to work with inner city youth that were economically disadvantaged. However, despite their situation, these students taught me so much. These students are now adults, and many have graduated from college and are living good lives. During my time at Young Leaders Academy, I earned my first Master of Education degree in Instructional Technology. After teaching at Young Leaders Academy, I began teaching and coaching at Morris for the Gifted and Talented. From there, I began at Stephen Middle School, located in Mequon, Wisconsin. 2 vastly different schools, but still I instilled care, hope, and love with the students that I work with. During this time, I earned my second Master of Education in Administration and Supervision with licenses in Special Education, Curriculum and Instruction, as well as Principal. Most recently, I have been the Assistant Principal at Parker High School for the past 9 years, where I've had the opportunity to serve others, including students, parents, and most certainly staff. I received my doctorate degree in education in 2017, and words of inspiration to which I share with my students is taken from the poem, Our Deepest Fear by Marianne Williamson. It says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? As we let our light shine, we inspire or unconsciously give others permission to do the same. I look forward to my principalship at Jefferson, and I'm excited to meet my team of staff and students. I'm a crybaby, I'm sorry. A special thank you to my family that is here with me today, my husband, David, and my daughters, Diana and Declan. Declan's underneath the pink coat. She's 4. And my daughter, Diana, is 7. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's not the first time you're going to cry being a principal.
Yeah. So true.
We're lucky to have you.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Nice job.
So you, I just wanted to ask, where did you go to high school in Milwaukee?
Nicolay.
Nicolay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
You
grew
taught
up
at
on a-
Morris. I went to Morris, and so I was just wondering if you were from the same
and my
area.
husband went to Morris.
Oh, wait, did you really?
Yeah, he went to
I
Morris.
would have to talk.
Dr. Roger Onick.
Yeah, we probably overlapped while we were there. So,
Yeah, so I
okay.
worked under his leadership for, I believe, the last year until he retired.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. It's wonderful to have you. You're going to be a
Thank
great
you.
impact at Jefferson.
Oh.
So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I'll introduce Sarah St. Martin. Sarah is joining us to become the principal at Wilson Elementary.
It's a tough act to follow. That was beautiful and eloquent, and I'm really looking forward to working with you. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I grew up in West Superior, Wisconsin, just south of Green Bay, and went to St. Norbert College, and with a degree in communications, even though I'm not showing that right now. Jeff told me I have 20 minutes, so just kick back and relax. After graduating, I volunteered with AmeriCorps as a service learning coordinator, which was a really exciting opportunity to see the impact that students can make in the community. I moved to Colorado to pursue my teaching license, and I was able to really get to know a lot of the different diverse backgrounds and communities in the Denver area. After I finished with that, I moved to Milwaukee, where I started my education career. I worked for St. Anthony on the south side of Milwaukee for 6 years. My first year as a 4th through 9th grade support teacher, supporting ELL students and any sort of support work with students who are struggling with reading and math. I then taught for 5 years in 3rd grade, and I really worked to move St. Anthony from a more teacher-focused and direct instruction school to a school that was student-centered, with supporting student work in guided reading and really serving as a teacher leader for that school community. I sought the opportunity to kind of expand my horizons and went to Greendale for 3 years, where I taught 2nd grade. And again, just really loved the community and getting to know a very different group of families and students. And looking for a leadership role, I moved this year to the Racine Unified School District, where I serve as an instructional coach I support 30 teachers, grades K-5 through 5th grade, special education and specialists, and I support their growth in the classroom and making their work student-centered, supporting their work with data-informed instruction, differentiation, implementing Readers and Writers Workshop, and then also shifting the coaching model from a 6-week kind of intensive cycle to a year-long ongoing cycle. And just being there to support them and guide their work through modeling and co-teaching, utilizing Sweeney's model of student-centered coaching, but really, looking to support the great things that are happening and then to continue to leverage and elevate that work. I'm really excited to be here, and I think this is a great opportunity to really become more involved in the community. I live just on the other side of 94, so West Dallas is just a stone's throw away from me, and I'm really excited for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome, thank you.
Good night.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Well, then we will move on to our action items for the evening. Item 11.1 is the individual contract extensions for administrators and at-will employees. Dr. Lexman?
Where am I here? Oh, 11.1. So this is similar to the authority that we asked for the board previously to offer teacher contracts and the non-renewals. All of those things require board authorization. So this would be individual contracts for administrators, so principals, assistant principals, our at-will employees, which are the deans, technology integrators, some of those positions. But I want to be clear, we're not offering the CPI increase at this point, or the language in the contract until we finalize budgets, and some of that work we'll be doing momentarily. It will be the same salary, not to be less than the current salary, right, is the way the contracts will be offered. And then if there's a point at which in the budget the board approves a CPI increase, then we'd go back and implement that.
Move to approve?
Second.
It's been moved and approved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Move on with that. All right, we will take a quick 5-minute break, and then we will go back for our workshop on financial stability and efficiency, the proposed 1920 budget and preliminary tax levy number 1. So we're at recess for 5 minutes.
Thanks for spending a little bit of time in the budget conversations with us. We're in the phase where we need to get some direction from the board around what are the most important things to make sure we're supporting the budget, right? So like the communication we sent out over the weekend, and some of the key messages even in the survey is that in a budget you can do anything, right? The challenge is you can't do everything. And even though we want to do everything, the resources don't exist for that. And so this is where a school board gets to be pretty important, is to help get some kind of direction set for us, so then we can come back and say, okay, here's how, we've tried to invest in the things that the school board thinks are most important for our district. The other piece of the messaging is that in actuality, budgets aren't really about money. They're about what's important, right? It goes back to that priority thing again. The budgeting part of it, we figure out after we get some guidance on these things are more important than those things to us. The survey that we asked you to take, and Caitlin's putting the items in rank order based on the survey results. It's not the be-all and end-all. There's many other things we spend money on. But what's there are the big chunks, right? So we always talk about salary and benefits is probably 80 to 85% of their budget. And so you got to ask the big questions around what to do inside of salary and benefits, and things like is maintaining CPI increases to their max, is that more important to you than performance pay, right? Is maintaining CPI increases to the max, is that more important to you than cost of health care, right? Because we can't do all of those, right? We've got to have some way to balance the budget, and we're still looking 6 to 8 million as the gap. I mean, a lot of teacher reductions due to declining enrollment, so that's in that mix too. But like many places, if you're watching other districts right now, going through the same kind of exercises to figure out how you get back to a balanced budget. Waukesha's closing a school, they're talking about it in New Berlin for probably some point in the future. Janesville had the big article in the news about their rapidly declining enrollment, so we're not alone in this. But what we thought we'd start with this, what Caitlin will do is just, again, build some background knowledge for the board on how our money comes in, how it turns into a tax levy and a mill rate. And then we'll get into the results of the survey. And then at the end, we're going to go through that document or some of the options that we think are reasonable to consider with regards to the proceeds from the sale of the building. So that's the workshop we want to work through tonight. Do I got to stretch? Should I just keep talking?
30 more seconds.
Oh, darn it, I almost got right on. You got to get plugged up. Oh, you're just going to log in there, grab it.
Alrighty. Hi. Thanks for
Caitlin,
patience.
since we are broadcasting.
Oh,
use
we
that.
are, okay. So we're gonna talk prelim 2019, 2020 budget and tax levy, as Marty explained. So I'm gonna go through kind of some big picture things first, and then we'll talk specifics. So again, that timeline that we talked about last time we met, this is the first year in the 1921 biennial budget. So in any case, with the first year, we don't know state budget factors until we're actually a couple months into our fiscal year. So the timeline is the Joint Finance Committee, they just did their listening sessions, so they're now editing the bills that will hopefully go to the Senate late May, early June. So this goes to the Senate, then it goes to the Assembly, then the governor. So hopefully sooner rather than later, but it's looking like August or September is when we'll actually know those budget factors. The state budget proposals, we're going with one that's realistically conservative today in the discussion that we'll talk about. So outside the revenue limit, we're going, the projections will show that $650 to $54 continuing per pupil categorical aid. So again, that's what we have this year. State statute says next year is going down to $630, but it's realistically looking like that'll stay at $654 next year. Again, just projection though, not finalized. And then we are using in these projections right now the figures that this $200 increase inside the revenue limit. So if you'll remember, inside the revenue, with all of our different factors and everything that we had within our budget, we actually get more revenue when we get this $200 in categorical aid. So to be a little more conservative, we're using the factor that it's going to be in the revenue limit in this projection. So if we do end up getting that $200 outside the revenue limit in the way of categorical aid instead of the revenue limit worksheet, we'll actually end up with a little bit more revenue. So this is conservative. Again, just noteworthy, we're still in flux at this point in the budget cycle as we don't know those factors for sure yet. So big picture with the funding formula, just because I think anytime we get a chance to refresh our minds on how this works, because it's a little bit complex. So the funding formula, the main drivers of it is your resident membership times a per pupil amount that's within that revenue limit worksheet. And then you add in those non-recurring and recurring exemptions, which gets you the revenue limit authority. So that's the full amount of money that we get via property taxes and equalization aid. So let me take that revenue limit authority less our equalization aid. So again, that's a whole nother complex worksheet. The state tells us our equalization aid, and that equals our tax levy. And then one step further, we take that tax levy divided by all of our property tax value, our property value, and that gets us our mill rate. So in looking at next year, proposals, projections, I should say, so this year our mill rate is at 9.54. The green bar in this graph is what's projected for next year. So with that first, the top graph shows projections with building sale proceeds in Fund 10. So that's as if we took everything we got, that $6.67 million from the building sale, and dumped it right into Fund 10 fund balance. So it's projected that that would actually increase our fund balance, or I'm sorry, our mill rate to about 9.61. Without it though, as if we didn't get the building sale or we don't put the building sale proceeds into Fund 10, our mill rate is expected to drop to projected about 9.37. So even with those building sale proceeds in Fund 10, it's 9.61 isn't a huge increase, especially when you look back to 2018 when we see that 10.99. So it still is relatively flat even with that fund balance, with that building sale added to the fund balance. Any questions on any of that? And just a quick note, the reason why the mill rate is going down or projected to go down is there's two main factors. One is that our revenue limit is actually decreasing, so therefore there's less money to be split amongst the property taxpayers. And then also there are factors within the equalization aid formula that affect how much equalization aid we get and therefore how much our property taxpayers are paying. So those are the primary, secondary, and tertiary guarantees per member, which is getting super technical. But those are the reasons why our mill rate is projected to decrease without that building sale proceed in Fund 10. So looking at those projections, which I'm going to pass out 2 sheets right now. One of them is a summary that we kind of looked at last time. It just shows the assumptions that are taken into account in this preliminary budget. You're going to just take one and pass it around. And then the next one is, it'll look familiar. It's that big document from last time showing where we're at right now.
Here, let me get one more. We need one more. Stephanie forgot one more.
We have left one more, but we'll pass it back down. You won't pass that down.
Should we leave these again?
You're good? So our projected, I'm going to start with the left part of this slide. So last year, or sorry, the 18-19. I already am referring to 18-19 as last year. 18-19's revenue, total projected for through the end of this year is, without the building sale, $109 million. Projected for next year is about $102.9 million. So the question is why? What's the difference? As we just touched on briefly before, is our revenue limits going down by about 1.5%. And then those Fund 38 debt payments that we had prepaid, so therefore they weren't lowering our Fund 10 revenue. We're seeing those now. So we prepaid from 17-18 into 18-19. So now in 19-20, we're actually having to budget for them. So the way that our revenue limit and the Fund 10 and Fund 38 tax levy works is, so our revenue limit is so high. Then we have to subtract whatever we have in debt payments for Fund 38, and then the rest of that is Fund 10. So if we have no Fund 38 debt, then we have more Fund 10 revenue to spend. The more Fund 38 debt we have, the more debt payments we have in that year, the less Fund 10 revenue we have. So that's why we're seeing the revenue decrease so drastically between the 2 years, is because we had prepaid those, so we didn't have that decrease in the Fund 10 revenue in 18-19 that we're seeing in 19-20.
So the Fund 38 debt, is that the CIP projects?
No, so that's part of it, and then it's the debt that we've had from past years. So it's the CIP, it's energy efficiency, there's the fund, that big one, that 26 million, that's currently sitting in just in the big account earning interest until we have to pay that off next year. And then there's some things from like 2013 in those debt payments, so.
Okay.
Yep.
I think I asked this in our committee meeting, and I know if you got an answer, but we had discussed about paying off that 26 to 24 million, I think it actually is, earlier, so that we wouldn't have the $1 million interest payment that we have to pay to try to save that.
Yep.
So we're just gonna pay it off, we're not utilizing it other than collecting interest on it. Did you ever get a response if there was a benefit to doing it instead of waiting until next March to do it, doing it now?
Yep, so I talked actually with our municipal advisors this morning, and so there's a few options we have with prepaying that debt. So they, wearing their bond hats, you know, and know all about that world, which I'm not entirely familiar with, they looked at the time that we have those debts, so when they're going to be paid off, and also the interest rate. So we can prepay that 24 million is callable. It was callable last April 2018, and then we can also prepay state trust fund loans. So they're looking into, like, our municipal advisors are looking into exactly some scenarios of, if you paid $2 million, here's what your interest would be decreased. So yes, that 24 million, but there is another one that's I think it's a 2017 trust fund loan, and that one actually, over the course of time, would save us more in interest if we paid that one rather than the 24 million. So our municipal advisors are running some scenarios of what might be our best bet if we do want to put money from the building sale towards Fund 38 to prepay.
Okay, but that would be paying off, not prepay. So when you say prepay, that's what we did previously where we were prepaying debt payments. But I'm talking about paying off the debt so we don't have it anymore. So the 24 million is going to be paid off and gone.
Yep.
Right now it's scheduled for next March. You're talking about a treasury bond from 2017.
Yep.
That's not getting paid off, or that's getting paid off?
So we would just be paying more than we're supposed to right now, more than our debt payment is requiring us to, therefore decreasing our interest in this scenario. So.
And that's better than paying off the 24 million earlier? It has higher interest than $1 million a year?
Yes. Well, and our municipal advisors are going to run those scenarios, so.
Okay.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to kind of just draw a connection to is, so the two pieces of paper you have, the regular size sheet, you can see that bottom right projected deficit number, 7.64, and then that should match in your big sheet, top right corner, 7.64 projected deficit. This exact scenario from last time we met was about 9.5 million deficit, so I just wanted to talk about why that's different. So one piece of that is our health insurance with a 15% increase is about $2 million. However, I didn't factor in that our plan year is a calendar year. So we're only going to see 6 months of that increase instead of the full year of increase. So that was about $1 million savings. And then the other big piece of that is staffing. So in the original projections, before we had those more accurate staffing numbers and knew what our reduction of force was going to look like, the original projection had about 15 staff members. This one is 30. So this is why this deficit is $2 million less than our original look at this exact same scenario. And then there's also little things. So what I did was I looked at 17-18 and 18-19 actuals and adjusted our revenue to match those more closely. So before we were giving ourselves more cushion. So for example, for interest, we would budget 50,000, but we'd actually get 300,000. So I really drew that closer together to reflect actuals. That's why this deficit is less for the same scenario. And then you'll just note too, so the right side that shows 1920 projected revenue, 102, 945, 150 matches your big sheet on that left column that shows our Fund 10 revenue. So that's just drawing that connection there. So this leads us into our conversation with the budget priorities. So as Marty mentioned, budget reflects priorities and in the form of dollars, but we have to first figure out what our board's priorities for our school district are. So, and the items that were listed on the survey are the greatest cost drivers in the budget. So this was the result of the survey. Thanks for your patience while I tallied the results. So we had 5 board members complete the survey, and the categories in order of, so that starting from the top, is the highest priority, active employee compensation. And then we had work environment, facilities, active employee benefits, and then active employee retiree benefits. Within each of those categories, sorry, I didn't put the categories in order, but, so active employee compensation, which was ranked as our most prioritized category. Within that, annual max CPI was ranked the highest, and then performance comp and supplementals tied. Within work environment, so I'm going to jump to the right side. Work environment, the highest priority was class size, and then we had staff professional development after, and then building budgets following that. So class size was ranked number 1 for priority within work environment. For facilities, these two were close. I think one was like 9 total points and one was 8, so they were very close. But for facilities, what the board told us was that only doing those highest priority needs for facilities was most important, and then the second most important thing or ranked was avoiding deferred maintenance. So that means putting a little bit more into facility capital improvement projects. Following facilities, then we have active employee benefits. So within that, so that middle column shows this was the order that was ranked. So health insurance plan design, which means the wide network that we have, the co-pays and deductibles, that's our plan design. Next, most important was that HRA, so the health reimbursement arrangement for admin, and at-will that we currently have as a benefit for those 2 employee groups. Then maintaining that 10% employee contribution. And then the final 2 that were tied, which are both, on more minimal end, were the cell phone stipends and the credit reimbursement. And then finally, for active employee retiree benefits, so that means anybody that's currently working when they retire. So the order of those was that a defined contribution plan was prioritized over a defined benefit plan. So right now we have a defined benefit plan. Defined contribution plan just allows you to budget more accurately because you exactly know what you're going to pay out. So I just wanted to go through those big categories and look at the top 2 and kind of go through why did we rank those as the most important, and then go through the bottom 2 and why did we rank those the least important, and just have a discussion about it. So what this is going to do then is this will lead to scenarios. So I'll be able to take this information and this discussion and put together scenarios. So we said active employee compensation is the most important. What does that mean for the bottom 2 priorities in this scenario? So starting with active employee compensation, and just I'm opening up to anybody, what makes this and the work environment piece, which is class size, professional development, and building budgets, the most important as we are going through our budget?
Well, for me, looking at where we rank as a district compared to other area districts, and we've talked about this time and time again regarding compensation, is just starting out we're good, but when you're talking about people who have some more experience, we drop off. And I just fear that if we start digging into that now at this point, we're going to get into a situation where we start losing some of the goodwill that we've gained with our staff right now. The work environment works hand in hand in that. You start making class sizes 40, 45 kids, that's going to really put a lot of strain on a teacher or any staff member for that matter, that has to work in that environment. And so for me, that's why those are my 2 high priorities. I was one of the people who filled out the survey, and so I wanted that to be my priority for that. And that's because I think that if you affect either of those things, that we're going to have both a detrimental effect on the staff as well as the students. Because if you start losing staff, those students don't have the continuity of teaching, which when you're talking elementary, well, at any level, like having the same teachers, day in and day out has been shown to have a direct effect on the amount of actual educating that happens in those classrooms.
Bill, do you have comments, too?
Yeah, I was going to say, very similar thoughts. I don't want us to be a training ground for other districts, which we've been, and we clearly see, at least in my experience here, is especially when it comes to leaderships of buildings, and if you're paying, the right compensation, you find the right people, those buildings thrive, and the right, the right teachers. And I don't want to train and let them go somewhere else. And we got to be competitive. They have to be competitive. Otherwise, it's the vicious cycle over and over again. You know, and that goes hand in hand with the class sizes and stuff like that. These teachers, I mean, the teaching in this day and age, I mean, a lot of things are changing with class sizes and co-teaching and deeper learning, and so that's a kind of a fluid, you know, but overwhelming these teachers, I mean, I hear it a lot, and with behavior, and it's different than just having a classroom of 28 people. I mean, it's so different now, you know, so just, I think class size, it just goes hand in hand with that stress, you know, of being being what you can handle.
And I would add too, so, I mean, I just quickly pulled up the strategic plan,
Mhm.
right? And so that, as I'm thinking about this and as I was, you know, doing the survey too, was like, how does this work with the plan that we've all adopted and have been striving towards? And the top two really fall into all of the building blocks, all of the, you know, all four of our groups and all four of our, you know, main objectives on the strategic plan is, you know, if we have happy employees and compensated employees and well-trained employees, and that leads to college and career readiness, and our employee engagement is strong, and that's our commitment to our community and our stakeholders, and, you know, then that also builds on our fiscal stability, and, you know, work environment is the same thing. I mean, those all kind of play into those four building blocks, and to me, that was part of the priority piece of it, was like, how do all of these things tie into our ultimate goals of what we're trying to accomplish? So, I mean, I think it's important, all these things are important, but I think we have to think about that too, is we've made this commitment that 2021, this is where we're going, and how do all of these pieces help us get there? And I think that it's pretty good representation. I think that this ranking is pretty close to meeting all of that in that kind of order, so, yeah.
What about the bottom two? So we have benefits, active employee benefits, and then active employee retiree benefits. We worded that weird because it was hard for us to say, we didn't want to just say retire benefits because we can't and won't change those that are already retired. So that's just for anybody that's still working.
So the retiree benefits for me was almost like an easy one because we've discussed modifying those benefits and the fact that it's just not a sustainable model for the district long-term. So, I mean, when you're talking about things where we need to look at and making cuts, I mean, we've already discussed making cuts there, so it seems like it should be something that should be looked at for doing that. And not that benefits aren't important, benefits can drive people to jobs. Some people come to West Dallas for the benefits that we have, but we've talked about that as well, that we do have a very rich benefit package here. So that's with, you know, the teeter-totter of aid, also teeter-totter of job. You have salary and you have benefits. Both those things make up the cost of an employee, and so you know, if you have to look at one or the other, then if you're giving one, you might have to lose in another. And I think from a staff perspective, if I put myself in my position in my job, if they were looking at, well, do you want to have one or, you know, we have to make cuts, it's going to have to be one or the other, I would understand at least, okay, well, they're providing me here, they're going to have to take from there. And so to me, that's that teeter-totter effect. If we decided we wanted to provide benefits, then I would say, okay, well, we're going to have to look at the compensation then, because I mean, really, there are one pot of money that we're looking at. It's one of the biggest pots that we have.
I was going to say one pot of money, but you just took my word, so.
I mean, we've always considered, like you said, rich in our benefits. I mean, is that really attracting faculty here versus the salary? I mean, what is a bigger draw to up-and-coming and teachers nowadays? Like, you know, is health care, you know, are people really understanding it nowadays? Like, you know, and worrying about it? I mean, as much, you know, is it attracting people and keeping them here versus the almighty salary?
I think it's more driven by salary for younger teachers, and I want to see their.
They don't look at the back end benefits.
No.
I don't think they do.
No, they don't.
Or if you're young.
And I lived through this in Shorewood, maybe I've talked about that with the board. Before I got there, the community supported a referendum to make the change from defined benefits to defined contributions. So they had a bunch of money to kind of get this system going. Where I picked up is in the design of the system, because now you're talking about people that are, you know, have a promised benefit that are 5 years away from retiring. Okay, so then what happens to them? Do they keep it, or do they get a big catch-up contribution, so all of a sudden there's 100,000 out of that 13 million or something in each of their funds? And it was really a combination of all of that kind of thing. Some employees were allowed to retire through the previous negotiated benefit. And then the next group, and this is every group below, we've talked about this, everybody in wherever that line is, the next person below the line feels that they just got the bad deal, right? And you keep doing these lines all the way down. But yeah, my sense, and talking to folks over there still, is when they're hiring young teachers, they explain this is our plan. You get, I don't know what it is anymore, $1,500, $1,800 a year, and there's vesting points. So if you leave before 5 years, your account stays into the overall system and it helps other people's. If you, and I think they might have done like a 5, a 10, something like that. So there's it's worthwhile to consider staying for 10 years. Is what we tried to build. And I don't think, and their salaries are higher than ours. I don't think Charlotte has any difficulty attracting teachers, even though their health benefits aren't as good, and the retiree benefits aren't as good as what we currently offer.
Right. I was gonna say, do we have numbers, I think building on something Bill said, do we have numbers of the teachers coming in, newer teachers coming in, if pay is more important, let's say, are they still on their parents' health care under, or do they have a spouse that has health care that they use, so the health care isn't going to be important? Do we have those kind of numbers, or can we get those kind of numbers?
Yep, I can certainly get them.
Well, that leads to another conversation, since we're going deep into healthcare right now. What did we call it, a membership audit?
Yes.
Is that what it was? It's a very uncomfortable thing to ask employees to do, because it feels invasive. But it's and it would all be handled by Hayes, you go through this third party, but everybody that's on the health plan, and all the dependents have to prove they actually are eligible to be on the plan. And so what happens over time is the 26-year-old, I forgot to take them off the plan, we're just gonna stay on a family plan, but now I don't need a family plan because, she's 29 and it's just me, but I stay on the family plan. Or a spouse dies, right? Now, we still have a family plan running. So you're trying to clean up some of those things. When you introduce it, people feel like you're invading privacy, because you have to, I have to go bring my birth certificate and whatever it is again, and they scan it, and, so it's some work, and it's a lot of communicating, but you can find savings in a health plan, especially one this size, I would imagine, that we're carrying people, and we're not calling people, that people are cheating. It's just, in these big systems, sometimes you forget to go in and clean them up.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the things, I think in probably all of our work and stuff too, we see that, is that people just, I'm not changing my name because it takes too long, right? I don't want to go through the hassle of doing it, right? So people, when these kinds of things happen, they don't want to take the time and the hassle of it. And not that they don't want to, they're like you said, they're trying to cheat the system. It's just, it takes work. If you can make the work kind of happen for them and make it, kind of deliver to them what has to be done, then that, you might get the changes made and people might actually take the initiative. It's a lot easier when they come knocking on your door and doing it versus, you gotta go somewhere, you gotta do this, and you gotta whatever, here's the stuff, do this, and you're done. It's a little easier.
I think framing it, and keeping transparent, I think this is a great idea to want to clean this up if we can find savings,
No?
Is there going to be any attempt as we move along this path to get any input from staff about these different choices, about what they would rather see, this or that? I know we did that when we were looking at the cuts after the failed referendum, seeing, well, these are the things we're looking at. Well, would you rather have performance comp, or would you rather have CPI? So, I'd be interested to know that input if, because it's not me, right? If the majority of teachers rather would have performance comp than CPI, then who am I to say, if it's the same amount of money, if it's the same amount of dollars you're looking at here, who am I to say that one is better than the other?
Yeah, we could certainly do some of that, and I think with the board having kind of prioritized the top two there, maybe it's inside of that we ask for some additional information. If we just stay, and this is what the board wants to focus on, then inside of that, because even inside of those, we probably can't do all of it.
Sure.
Right.
Because max CPI is 2.44, so that's what is it on here? Do you have it on there? Yeah. Yeah, 1.3
1.3.
million. And performance comp is 1.8. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
This is helping, so now
Yep.
we got the proceeds of the building, is that the next
Yep.
part? Cool.
Okay, so this one's fun. You can,
We all got our homework.
take on, oh, here's another one.
You might already have this one. I think it's the same thing that she put in the.
This is the that's on board book.
Same one that's on board book, yep. So I'm just gonna start with a couple high-level, background finance information as it relates to this, because some of it's kind of important and is the reason why we laid out some of these scenarios as we did. So our fund balance, as of the start of this year, so we have that $24 million debt payment that we have principal payment of for next year. We have that cash in the bank, so I don't consider that part of our fund balance, because we're paying it off. It's not really ours. So without that, starting this year, we had about 13 million in fund balance. Best practice, which isn't a rule, a law, a statute, or anything, but it's said to be about 20% of fund balance, and of your general operating budget is 20%. And the reason for that is it's just whatever level gets you to not have to short-term borrow, because when you short-term borrow, you have additional interest you have to pay. So, and that's generally said to be 20%. So for us, that would be about 22 million in fund balance. So right now we have 13 million. Another big major point that I wanted to bring up was the mill rate. So it's that bold part in that mill rate section. So when you get a large increase in revenue or an expense, it's going to swing the mill rate the next year. So assuming all other factors stay the same, a revenue like we got with the building sale, without an equal expense, will decrease aid and therefore increase the mill rate the following year. So we saw that in that graph. And the same thing with the expense, but opposite. So we're focusing on the revenue right now. So again, the revenue, a large increase in revenue will decrease equalization aid and therefore increase the mill rate. However, so our mill rate last year was 10.99, which I can go back to that graph. Last year was 10.99. This
9.54 last year.
Yeah, 2 years ago was 10.99.
2 point.
Yeah,
17, 18.
This year was 9.54.
This year's 9.54. Sorry, what if I said that wrong? And then next year, with the building sale proceeds, is projected to be 9.61, which is relatively flat.
Yeah.
Without it, so we'll go through the different scenarios. So let's say we put it in Fund 49 and it doesn't even hit Fund 10, it would go down. The mill rate would be projected to go down. And I wouldn't take these numbers like this is not going to stay the same, but just the idea that our mill rate likely is going to drop next year, and it's because of those couple factors in the equalization aid formula. So even with that building sale in fund balance, it's not affecting it too greatly. And then the last thing I want to talk about before we kind of go into the scenarios is Fund 49. So Fund 49 is a capital improvement fund, similar to Fund 46. However, the unique thing about Fund 49 is that you only can put money into it by a few things: gifts, borrowing, or sale of assets. So one of those is what we have right now. For Fund 46, the difference is you can always transfer from Fund 10 into Fund 46, so that's always an option for us. Fund 49 is only those couple ways that you can get the revenue in that fund. And then the benefit of Fund 49 or Fund 46 is that that is not affecting our mill rate. So it doesn't affect equalization aid, which then in turn doesn't affect our mill rate.
Then you're limited in what you can use it for?
So you have to say when you put it in Fund 49 what's for, but it can be vague. Fund 46, same situation, but you have to wait 5 years to use it.
Which fund is the field restoration in?
46.
46, okay.
So I'm going to go through, and we worked through these in committee, so they offered some great notes for talking through it with the whole board. So a couple things I wanted to explain. So you'll notice that we use the term unfunded debt payment, so I just wanted to explain what that is. So we talked about how we under-levied in Fund 38 this year. So our revenue limit, we still levied the full amount. Just that portion that was Fund 38 that reduces that Fund 10 should have been greater. So we should have had actually less Fund 10 revenue to play with this year. So when I say unfunded, we still levied our full amount. We just should have levied more in Fund 38 and therefore a little bit less in Fund 10. So the first option on here is to allocate the entire amount into fund balance, so into Fund 10, and do not use for future expenses. That projection that you see with the $7.6 million deficit, that's as if we have to pay that unfunded $800,000 amount next year out of Fund 10. So that's if we would allocate money from the building sale to Fund 10, this deficit would go down by $800,000. So it would be 6.8 million deficit instead of 7.6. So then again, that's going to increase if with option number 1. It would increase our fund balance. It would be entirely all into fund balance. Our mill rate would go up slightly, likely projected, and then the reason why is because that equalization aid would decrease by about $1 million. So then that essentially would be moved to the taxpayers to pay that spread out. So that's why it's not too big of an increase. So the next option on here is transferring $800,000 into Fund 38 for those unfunded debt payments. So that would decrease this deficit by $800,000 and then allocate the remaining 5.8 into fund balance. Oh, and one other thing I want to say is as we go through these, this is just like kind of like the main highlights, so we can pick and choose and do any kind of scenario, or if you want me to plug some other numbers and say what would this do to the mill rate, we can do any of that. So these are just kind of to get our minds thinking. So for that second one, that would increase our fund balance by $5.8 million, and the mill rate would be projected to go up to 9.58 from 9.54, and because these are projections, I'm considering that little to no change. Another option is transferring $800,000 into Fund 38 for those debt payments and earmarking rent, essentially, or our lease payment for the next 5 years, and then keeping the rest in fund balance. So this one, mainly this is a deficit budget. So we would budget as if we're going to use our fund balance or our building sale money to pay for our rent each year for 5 years. And then a note with this was that we just got our bond rating upgraded from a Baa3 to a Baa2. And our outlook increased from stable to positive. And the two factors that they noted were increased financial stability and increase in fund balance. So deficit budget wouldn't help out our bond rating. I don't know necessarily like if we had it, if it was on purpose and we said we are, using this fund balance to pay for our rent for the next 5 years, I would have to talk that over with Moody's to see if that would be a ding on our bond rating or not. But the two factors that they stated would help us continue to increase our fund balance were those, so this, per that, wouldn't help our fund balance. So the next one, number 4 on the back, is transfer $800,000 into Fund 48 for unfunded debt payments, and then allocate money to either Fund 38 or 49, and then the remaining goes in fund balance. So it's kind of a mix of paying off that debt that we should have levied in Fund 38 this year, and then allocating some money towards another fund, and then the rest in fund balance. So if we go through that Fund 38 option, this would decrease next year's debt payments, and therefore would decrease that deficit by $2 million. So it would, our Fund 38 levy would be $2 million less, so that, therefore we'd have $2 million more in Fund 10. And then the Fund 49 option, kind of similar thing. So we would have $2 million more in Fund 49 to spend on capital improvement projects. Our kind of minimum to maintain facilities each year is $1.2 million. So we could either take that and not pay for $1.2 million, so this deficit would get $1.2 million better, or not use that and just plan to have that for a future potential like admin building addition onto the wellness center, whatever we would decide. Or we could use that towards CIP and then use $1.2 million of it next year and then the rest for future CIP expenses. This one, again, kind of keeps our mill rate flat, so it's close. This is as close to flat as any of these projections are, and then would increase our fund balance by $3.8 million. And then the last option on this sheet, but certainly not our last option that exists, is transferring $800,000 into Fund 38, and then just the remaining into Fund 49. So again, this would have the least impact on our mill rate, and we know that our mill rate is projected to go down, so therefore we would see this mill rate decrease to 9.37 projected. if we did move it all into Fund 49. And then in our Finance Committee, we talked about the different options we have. So we could use that next year to not have to pay our 1.2 million, or we could just keep that and say, we want to use all this future $5.8 million for future projects and not have it factor into our yearly budget, because we do know that that's going to run out after 4 or 5 years, and then we're going to be in a similar position.
So I just want to, we did discuss these options, and we came to a consensus within the committee that option number 4, we like the best, and the reason being that it kept the mill rate flat. It allowed us to put money into Fund 10 to help continue to build that fund balance, but did not affect that fund rating, the mill rate. And we were more in lines of not putting money to prepay things. So we were not in the mood of let's put money into Fund 49 and not budget for CIP for the next 5 years, or put $2 million into the Fund 38 and then not worry about, like, we prepaid that debt, and I think that got us in trouble because we're not realizing that we are still owing this money in our budget because we weren't budgeting for it.
So it breaks that cycle.
Right. So we were in favor of taking the 800,000 that should have been budgeted, from taking the 800,000 at one time and paying that in Fund 38 so that we could take that off the budget to bring it to 6.8. But the other 1.8 we wanted to see in Fund 49 to offset that amount, so the remainder would go into our Fund 10. That was what we kind of came to a consensus on.
That was the committee's consensus?
Yeah. And we really didn't want to do that prepayment thing, because it took me by surprise when I heard about this and how the prepayment was affecting us and not realizing it, and now we're kind of coming due on that. And I don't want to, it's almost like kicking that can down the road. We're paying it, but not out of this year's budget, and so we're kind of getting used to having that extra money.
Sure.
And now we don't.
Well, and it goes back to the priorities too, what we just discussed, and then going back to the strategic plan. I mean, it kind of those, that thinking gets us sort of all like in the same line. So it's good, that's good. Thank you for sharing the feedback to the committee.
I will say that when I read through this over the weekend, that was my first thought, was I liked number 4
Yeah.
best. I really, number 3, I liked the idea of setting aside the rent each month, but what are the implications of that? Where do you put it? How do you make sure it stays there? That kind of.
One of those long-term things that
Yeah.
Caitlin mentioned too, that we don't even know what potentially
Right.
would impact us.
It sits in Fund 10, it's just there. So it still have the same levy impact as it would if we just put it all in Fund 10.
Exactly.
So, and the negative budget thing I didn't like, because it's all, she said, it's all about trends.
Yeah.
So if we continue to trend as far as putting money into our Fund 10 and making a balanced budget, we're gonna continue getting that good bond rating up into the single A realm, which is really then gonna help any short-term borrowing that we have. And by putting the amount that we're looking at putting into Fund 10, we're actually getting very close to that 20%, and I think that will help us a lot. And we're still budgeting $500,000 every year to put into Fund 10 out, beyond that. So I think that will help.
Yeah, and we're projecting a little bit of a surplus, probably closing out this year, so that'll land in Fund 10 as well.
Right.
Well, and, as we talk through the priorities and things like that, it's, one thing that we haven't had the luxury of, at least since I've been on the board, is we haven't had the luxury of, what do we want our budget to be like in 5 years? Because it's been about digging out of these holes. And we're to a place now where we're not under the ground, that we are, more on a hillside. And so now we have the opportunity to say, okay, let's take a step back and say, what are we trying to set up for the next couple of years? And this, putting these options together and kind of reviewing it like that does set us for that kind of forward thinking. And it's not just, oh my gosh, it's this next emergency. It's, we can start thinking about how our budget will look in 3 years and 4 years and 5 years. And so I'm grateful that we've been able to get there, because it didn't look that way a few years ago, so.
Well, there's been a lot of hard work.
But
over the last several
yeah,
years,
and so now we're to that point where we
Before I
can
was
think
even
about.
on the board, so thanks to all of you who were and did that work. It's a team effort, really, so.
So it's not just about this year, it's about
Right.
the year after and the year after that. So, and that's important for us to continue to think through too,
Right.
as we're reviewing all these, is it's not just about tomorrow, but it's, so.
Can I ask what the pros and cons are of putting that 2 million in 38 or 49?
Yeah.
Is there one benefit?
Yeah, so the
to the
38
other?
option, this is what our municipal advisors are working through. So I said, pretend we put 2 million of our building sale to prepay, and that's when we looked at, okay, that $26 million GO bond or the 2017 state trust fund loan and those different interest options. So they're gonna run, okay, so if we did that, what would our interest decrease? And that would be the benefit. So like we would put 2 million in there and then we would have 500,000 less in an interest payment or something. So I'll bring that, I told him I'm leaving, so said on vacation. So I told him if he can, no rush because I'm already presenting this tonight, get a number back by May 20th, and I can bring that to the board meeting and say, if we did this option, what would our interest decrease if we did Fund 38? And then the Fund 49 option is just that those expenses then don't affect shared costs and therefore don't affect equalization aid or the mill rate. And we can use it however we want. So, I mean, within the capital projects. But we can use it to fund our CIP for next year, or we could put it towards a future admin building or whatever we decide.
We know we're gonna have capital projects at some point.
Right.
Right.
So we can just say in general, it's a capital
Yeah.
project. It doesn't have, like with the 46, it had to be specific, we had to be specific.
Yeah.
That can change.
I'll have to look for sure, because I haven't put anything in Fund 49 before, but so I'll work with CPI and come back with exactly how specific we have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to suggest is, maybe with some of this building sale money, if we do decide to put some into Fund 49, is it was mentioned about where we're gonna go after this lease is up. And obviously, we don't wanna wait until year 4 to figure that out.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there was mention about building out 9333. I don't know how much effort has been put into that, as into how much like actual engineering or otherwise work has been done to, but maybe putting some dollars towards that to say, is this a feasible option? Could we have enough square footage so we can either keep it on the list or remove it from the list as our consideration?
Yeah, we can go a little further. I mean, what we've done is just a very initial kind of engineering review to determine if the lower portion, which is the electrical shops and all those kind of things, if that can support a second floor, and it can.
Right.
So you can go up. There's probably enough room to go out a little bit, but you eat up parking so much there. The other thing we did is when we were putting in the wellness center, there was some roof damage that turned into wall damage, so it kind of buried in the cost of the wellness center is that whole first floor got gutted.
Okay.
And so there's a whole part of it that's just bare walls.
Oh, okay.
Right. So we
can
just
build
decided
it.
to go that far, we've got, the dumpsters over there, let's get it all out.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of work done. That's probably the cheapest part of it, but.
I just thought, because it was mentioned, and so it seems like that would be possibly the most cost-effective thing to do, if it works space-wise for what we need square footage. That's what I don't know. But if maybe using some of that dollars that we got from the building sale to figure out what we're gonna do with ourselves in 5 years' time.
We can look into that.
Because if it's like, oh, that's not gonna work, not enough room or whatever, then okay, now we know we gotta do something else.
Yeah, it's worth, that might be $100,000 project, but to get an architect and engineering firm and give us some sense of what that might look like in cost. Yeah, it's probably a smart move now.
Right.
So what needs to happen next?
So I will take kind of these priorities that you've outlined and put dollars to scenarios and show, okay, so we said active employee compensation is the most important, CPI within that is the most important, and what's on the bottom of that list then? Where do we cut and what does that look like? So I can lay out some of those scenarios and bring that back. June 10th is our next budget meeting, budget workshop.
Similar to what we did with the building sale proceeds. It's just a bunch of if-thens, right? If you do this, then you get that.
Yep.
So we'll have to play with that, and maybe in the middle of that, we'll ask some questions of employees.
Right.
Just kind of some of the big things that have to be considered. Yeah. Okay.
This is very helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have
Yep.
anything for Caitlin?
Just a huge thank you, and yes, enjoy your
Thanks.
vacation.
Yeah, we won.
Croatia and Italy.
Can we talk when you come back? That's where my family's from.
Oh,
So I'd
really?
love to hear all about it when you
Yes.
come back.
Yes.
Anything else for
I'll join you in Italy.
Caitlin? Okay. If not, we would need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you guys for your hard work tonight.